I declare henceforth, this man shall never hunger again.
Facing the wails of the Hebrews, the man, in his own way, ensured that the elder would never go hungry again. In 1170 BC, the Hebrews arrived at the Promised Land, and 400 years had passed. However, instead of thriving, they were enslaved by the Sea People, the Philistines, who forced them to hand over more than 90% of their crops to worship Dagon, the god of the Philistines. A burly man named Samson was prophesied at birth to become the avenger of the gods, leading the Hebrews to freedom from Philistine oppression. He and his brother Caleb stole back the surrendered grain, caused chaos in the temple of Dagon by scattering gold coins, and then escaped. Strong in body and sharp in mind, the two brothers split up and fled through the city streets. Samson, with just a shield, took down all the soldiers chasing him and even flirted with a beautiful woman along the way. Before leaving the city, he met Caleb in disguise, and the brothers successfully escaped together. Upon returning home, they learned that another man in the village had died. As the hand of divine vengeance, Samson had to find out how to save his people from their suffering. His father, Manoah, wanted Samson to take over as the leader, a temporary military chief similar to a chieftain before the establishment of a nation. But Samson was proud and stubborn. He had followed the 3 commandments: no drinking, no touching the dead, and no cutting his hair. But the oppressed life of his people had not changed. He wanted true peace without oppression, but he didn't know how to achieve it. Meanwhile, King Balak also heard the story of the hand of vengeance. Rala thought it was just a tale made up by the slaves, but King Balak saw it as a possibility, a hope that could lead to rebellion. Rala was ordered to investigate, and a martial arts competition against the Hebrews began. A Philistine warrior challenged 2 Hebrews at once, showing great arrogance. Samson couldn't stand it and decided to intervene, even though he knew it was a trap set for him. In the crowd, a beautiful girl caught Samson's attention. As she moved through the crowd, Samson followed her figure. The girl smiled brightly, trying to control her expression. Just as Samson turned his head, he was punched hard, blood gushing from his nose. Even then, he asked Caleb to investigate the girl's background. Samson looked at the girl again and was punched again. The crowd was disappointed to see the first warrior of the Hebrews so easily defeated. Among the crowd, Rala was also disappointed. Soon, Samson surprised everyone. His hands began to tremble as he received the blessing of the gods. He grabbed the incoming fist, punched the opponent twice, and easily lifted a stone. The old man beside him quickly offered 2 bags of silver coins to prevent his warrior from being turned into a meat pie. Samson's bravery amazed the girl, who couldn't help but look back at him repeatedly. It turned out that the 3 of them were sent by Rala to lure Samson into using his strength. Because of the loss of money, the father and daughter were forced to work, and the failed warrior was deemed worthless. Caleb really helped Samson find out about the girl. Her name was Taryn. She lived in Gaza, and she was Rala's maid. With this information, Samson quickly found Taryn and secretly followed her, expressing his love. Samson said that he fell in love with Taryn at first sight. Taryn joked, "Are you sure it wasn't from the punch?" They both laughed. Before parting, Samson invited Taryn to watch the sunrise by the sea the next day. How did a warrior fall to this state? The story goes back to the seaside date a few days ago.
I believe you can be that man.
After meeting twice, they decided to get married. Love 3,000 years ago was so simple and pure. As long as they were together, they were content. Under the thick tree, they exchanged their true hearts and wanted to announce to the world that Hebrews and Philistines could also form families and live in harmony. Samson told his parents about this, and as expected, they strongly opposed it, saying that Samson marrying an enemy's daughter would bring shame to the family. Samson went to the forest to ask the heavens, but instead of a miracle, he heard 2 lion roars. Samson quietly retreated, accidentally stepping on dry wood, making a sound. The lion heard the noise and ran towards him, pouncing on Samson like a hungry lion on its prey, and the 2 wrestled on the ground. Facing the lion's sharp teeth and bloody mouth, Samson grabbed the lion's upper and lower jaws, using all his strength to kill the lion. A few days later, when Samson returned to the lion, the fierce lion had become a carcass, and bees had built a hive inside it. Samson picked up a piece of honey, and an idea suddenly came to his mind. Food comes from the eater, and sweetness comes from the strong. Taryn was immersed in the joy of love, humming a song while making the bed for Samson. Rala's wife, Delilah, had just had an argument with Rala and was very unhappy. She asked Taryn why she was so happy, and learned that Taryn's fiancé was the Hebrew savior, Samson. Delilah then came up with a plan. Delilah advised Rala to marry Taryn to Samson, so that they could firmly control this unstable factor and smoothly inherit the throne. Rala adopted this suggestion and agreed to hold a wedding for Samson and the maid Taryn, but his inner pride made him always want to trample Samson underfoot. He first tricked Samson into drinking, breaking his oath, and then challenged Samson to a riddle.
Night I come, without being called. By day, I am lost without being stolen. What am
Samson couldn't answer it, and the answer was stars. Feeling humiliated at the pre-wedding party, Samson also wanted to propose a riddle, one that no one could guess, with the sleeveless shirts of the 30 Philistines present as the stakes. If Samson lost and couldn't provide the shirts, he would have to pay with his head, which had already gone beyond the scope of entertainment. Samson posed the riddle.
Out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet.
The deadline was the next day's dawn. Rala was stumped by the riddle, but he wouldn't admit defeat, so he used Taryn's father's life to force Taryn to ask for the answer. Taryn couldn't stand by and watch her father die, so she asked Samson for the answer on the rooftop, honey and lion. Delilah, hiding in the dark, heard everything clearly. The next day, Rala easily gave the answer, and Samson was greatly surprised. To save Taryn, Samson agreed to find 30 sleeveless shirts. He traveled over mountains and rivers and finally encountered a group of more than 30 Philistine soldiers by a well, who seemed to have come to deliver the shirts. The man grabbed the blade with his bare hand. The bald captain couldn't pull the sword out no matter how hard he tried, but Samson did it with just one punch, and the bald captain was defeated. Samson looked at the other soldiers and said,
Your tunics.
Relying on their numbers, the soldiers tried to resist, drawing their swords to surround Samson, unaware that they were the ones surrounded. Samson punched each soldier, and no one could make him strike twice. The brutality made even the bound Hebrew slave girls unable to watch. One punch after another, all the Philistine soldiers were defeated. The slave girls, who should have thanked Samson for saving them, were also terrified. In their eyes, Samson was also a beast-like existence. Samson wanted the slave girls to help him collect the soldiers' sleeveless shirts because he had vows not to drink, touch the dead, or cut his hair. The terrified slave girls said nothing and fled. For the sake of his beloved Taryn, Samson finally broke his vow, carrying a bag of sleeveless shirts away. When Samson brought the sleeveless shirts to Rala, Rala said that, according to the decree of the god Dagon, once a wedding began, it must be carried through to the end. So he reluctantly helped Samson. However, Samson was sentenced to hard labor for killing Philistine soldiers and would spend the rest of his life in the mines. Seeing this, Delilah realized that the arrogant Rala would have to pay the price for his actions.
Hebrew! Taran! I release them!
Taryn was brutally killed, and then the entire village was captured just to make the Hebrew savior, Samson, submit. Just as Samson was about to be sent to the gallows, Rala thought the situation was under control and brutally killed his father before the execution. The enraged Samson broke free from his bonds at the last second before the executioner's axe fell. The clear sky rumbled with thunder. Rala ordered his soldiers to draw their swords and engage. Even if you, Samson, possess divine power, I still have an army of 1,000 men. Samson casually picked up a piece of jaw from the ground and struck the nearest Rala down with a single blow. He fought against 1,000 soldiers with his jawbone. Samson roared in anger, swinging his arm. The bone was as hard as a rock, deflecting sword attacks while its sharp edges could kill charging soldiers. The red-cloaked general confidently pushed aside the other soldiers to fight at the front, intending to show loyalty to Rala. However, he was quickly defeated by Samson. Samson avenged Tarun and his father. Rala's left eye was slashed open, and he ordered the entire army to behead Samson. The battle horn sounded, and more Philistine soldiers marched out of the forest. Samson was slightly injured by a soldier's sword, but retaliated with a shoulder throw. His tattered clothes were discarded, and he fought bare-chested, dealing more damage. The charging soldiers were one by one defeated. Samson grabbed a soldier's collar and threw him off a cliff. The soldiers kept coming, and Samson knocked down the stabbing swords with a horizontal sweep, then swung his weapon at the soldiers' heads. Soon, the Philistine soldiers' numerical advantage became apparent, and Samson was surrounded. The soldiers repeatedly emphasized that Samson is alone, to boost their own courage. They swarmed and pinned Samson down. At the bottom, Samson prayed with his eyes closed and instantly gained strength beyond mortal limits. The soldiers on top of him were thrown off, and the melee continued. The Philistine soldiers panicked and became fearful. When the soldiers realized they were doomed to fail, their morale collapsed, and pessimism spread among the remaining soldiers. The soldiers continuously pushed their comrades towards Samson while slowly retreating, trying to escape this purgatory. However, Rala's gaze from behind prevented the soldiers from retreating. Soon, the bodies of the fallen soldiers piled up into a small hill, and thousands of people fell under the weapons. Samson dragged his tired body away, and Lala launched a sneak attack from behind. Clearly, he was no match for Samson, and Samson did not strike to kill, sparing Rala's life. the nearly dehydrated Samson knelt on the ground praying for water. A spring suddenly gushed from a small pit in front of him, a gift from the gods. The camera pulled back, revealing the entire hillside covered with the bodies of soldiers. Having lost Taran, Samson was anointed with oil and completed the ceremony to become the tribal judge. On the battlefield, Rala woke up from his sleep, and the pain in his face reminded him that what had just happened was not a dream. Samson truly possessed the power of the gods. Rala truthfully reported this to King Balak, but it only provoked King Balak's anger. Is the god Dagon we worship just a decoration, and Samson's god is the real one? Rala was determined to obtain Samson's power, and his wife Delilah had to help. King Balak was furious upon hearing this and blamed Rala, exiling him to the west to lead the slaves. King Balak was also convinced by Samson's divine power and sent a message to Samson, saying that as long as he swore not to use violence again, he would not be held accountable. Years later, Rala returned from the frontier, and the Hebrews were once again troubled by violence, pushed to the brink of hunger. The Hebrews found Samson and said, "For many years we have listened to you, but nothing has changed. To gain true freedom, we have only one way, to wage war." But Samson refused, believing that war would only bring suffering to the people. To resolve this, he decided to personally negotiate with King Balak and promised, "If I cannot bring true peace, I will not return." However, he was still too naive. When Samson found King Balak and said he represented his people in the negotiation, King Balak retorted, "What bargaining chip do you have?" Samson replied, "True peace should mean reducing attacks and giving us what we deserve, or you will face the wrath of God again and bury thousands of soldiers' bodies." King Balak was unsettled by these words and said, "You dare to threaten me with natural phenomena? Don't you know that my military strength has greatly increased now? The only reason you are still alive is because of my mercy. If you want tax relief, there is only one way. You must disappear forever." Because Samson did not want to abandon his people, their negotiation ended unhappily. Later, Samson asked his subordinates to leave first, as he wanted to stay and continue to persuade King Balak. At this moment, a woman appeared, saying that she ran an inn with good facilities, especially serving important figures. When Samson arrived at the inn, Delilah came to his room. Samson recognized this woman. Delilah had come with Rala to his wedding. She was not a good woman, so he asked, "What are you doing here?" Delilah replied, "I am here to warn you. Everyone in the city knows you are here, and they are setting traps to catch you because you have torn their families apart." Samson said, "Why should I believe you?" The woman said, "I envy Taran for having such a good man like you. I will never meet one in my life and can only live with a broken heart every day." As she spoke, tears filled her face, and her genuine emotions moved Samson. At this moment, the innkeeper brought soldiers to the room, which confirmed that Delilah was not lying. Samson quickly took Delilah and escaped. They hid in a corner. Now, the whole city was searching for Samson. Delilah said, "There is a house outside the city where my grandmother lives. You can hide there." Since the soldiers' target was Samson, Delilah was temporarily safe, so Samson ran alone towards the outskirts of the city. However, Samson was still discovered, and now he had to fight his way out. At this moment, a group of villagers surrounded him. The city gate was closed, and there were archers on the city wall. Samson was now surrounded by soldiers. Samson was shot by 2 arrows and driven to the city gate. Facing the villagers' curses and hatred, Samson felt helpless for the first time. Although he was a hero of the Hebrews, his hands were also stained with the blood of the Philistines. At this moment, Samson pushed the city gate with both hands and could only pray to God. Suddenly, divine power appeared again. The heavy city gate was lifted by Samson. He wanted everyone to witness the power of God with their own eyes. So Samson carried the city gate step by step out of the city. At this moment, Samson, who was injured by arrows, fainted in the forest. The next day, Delilah came to rescue Samson. 2 days later, Samson woke up and found that the person who saved him was Delilah, whom he had met in the city. After expressing his gratitude, Samson returned to the tribe. This time, Samson's negotiation with the royal palace failed, and the Philistines still came to collect food. At this moment, a mother and son said to Samson, "We trusted you so much, but now we are equally disappointed." Facing the misunderstanding of his people, Samson and Caleb united the warriors of the tribe and prepared to fight back with weapons, but they needed Samson's leadership. So Caleb found Samson, but Samson had already packed his bags and was ready to leave. Samson told Caleb, "I have tried countless times to save our people, but all have ended in failure. Now I am really tired and don't want to watch you go to your deaths." Later, Samson took his luggage to Delilah and lived a happy life with her. However, Delilah had another purpose. She was arranged by Rala to be by Samson's side, mainly to find out the secret of Samson's great strength. Later, Delilah used the excuse that there should be no secrets between lovers to find out the secret of Samson's divine power. It turned out that Samson had to keep 3 covenants with God: no drinking, no touching the dead, and no cutting his hair. Now he had already violated 2 covenants. If his hair was cut, his divine power would disappear. So Delilah put a potion in Samson's food and cut off his hair. At this moment, Rolla led the soldiers to capture Samson. Without his hair, Samson indeed lost his divine power and was easily subdued by the soldiers. At this time, Caleb outside the house tried to rescue Samson, but was easily subdued by Rolla. Later, Samson was brought out. Rolla's humiliation over the years was finally avenged. Rolla blinded Samson and then locked him and Caleb up. At this moment, Samson was very regretful and begged God for forgiveness because he had failed again and implicated his family. After being imprisoned, Rolla found Samson and promised to release Caleb, but on the condition that Samson must reveal the secret of his divine power and how to inherit it. Samson said, "My divine power comes from God, and it cannot be inherited by those who are not chosen." Rolla thought Samson was not telling the truth and whipped him severely. At this time, Caleb pleaded for Samson and said, "To have divine power, you must humble yourself, or God will teach you how to be humble." Rolla left angrily after hearing this. At this time, Rolla came to King Balak. King Balak reprimanded him, "Why didn't you kill Samson? If the people of Samson find out that you have captured Samson, there will be another great war." Rolla said, "Killing Samson directly is too wasteful. Now everyone knows that Samson has the power of God. If I bring Samson out to play with, then the Hebrews will know that we are more powerful than their God, and everyone will submit to us." But King Balak disagreed and reprimanded Rolla for not understanding anything. At this moment, a dagger was stabbed into King Balak's body.
I may not have your wisdom, your experience, or even your love, but I have your crown!
Later, Samson was brought out by Rolla to be humiliated in public. Samson was first hung up and whipped by the soldiers, and the people below also hated Samson. Watching Samson being tortured, the people were satisfied. At this time, Rolla ordered the soldiers to put Samson down because he wanted to change the way he tortured Samson. At this moment, Samson knelt on the ground and prayed to God for the last time to give him strength so that he could perish together with these Philistines. God seemed to hear Samson's prayer. Suddenly, there was a strange phenomenon in the sky, with lightning and thunder. At this moment, Samson's divine power reappeared. He instantly tore off the iron chains, then stood up between the pillars and stretched out his arms to push the stone pillars. At this moment, Rolla realized something was wrong and quickly ordered the soldiers to kill Samson, but it was too late. Samson exerted all his strength to push the stone pillars with both hands, letting out a lion-like roar. Soon, the great hall began to collapse, and people inside scattered in all directions. Finally, the entire temple collapsed, and everyone was buried underneath. From this day on, the Hebrews rose up. Caleb followed Samson's instructions and organized the warriors of the tribe. With Samson's strength and confidence, they launched a decisive battle against the Philistine army. After this battle, they gained temporary freedom. So, who will bring them true freedom? Decades later, a young shepherd appeared, and a true king of the Hebrews was born.